Coming up on iOS Today, Rosemary Orchard and I, Mikah Sargent, have a great episode planned for you because we've got iPads Pro, and we're talking about them today on this very episode of iOS Today. Get it?
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is iOS Today, episode 704, recorded Tuesday, May 21st, 2024, for Thursday, May 23rd, 2024. Apple's new M4 iPad Pro. Welcome back to iOS Today, the show where we talk all things iOS, tvOS, HomePodOS, watchOS, a lot of other Vision OS, and most importantly for this episode, iPad OS. This is the show where we help you make the most of those wonderful devices you purchase by telling you about cool things you can do with them, like downloading apps and installing stuff and using accessories. I'm one of your hosts, Mikah Sargent, and hey there, friend.
Hi, I'm Rosemary Orchard. I've decided against doing a funny accent at the very last second because I'm not sure I can keep it up, but I do have shiny new iPad Pro. So we have so much to talk about, Mikah. So many good things.
We do indeed. And I love that there's even a potential possibility that my brain actually thinks about doing an accent before it just happens, because that's just not the case. It just spills out of my mouth. It's a mess. I don't know. There it goes. It's happening again. Anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about. What is happening? We're here to talk about the new iPads Pro. And I say that iPads Pro because there are multiple iPads Pro, I mean. There's the 11-inch and the 13-inch iPad Pro, as well as a new iPad Air. But, Rosemary, you and I specifically did purchase the iPad Pro model. And so we're going to talk about that today on the show because not only did we get that, we also got the accessories that come along with it. Apple did announce this device and the iPad Air at its recent event, a special event, which for us just meant it was recorded very early in the morning, or rather played back very early in the morning. And it was kind of what people expected for the most part, but there were some hidden things we didn't know about. Now, our last episode of iOS Today covered everything that was announced. This episode is about actually having the hardware in hand. I will be doing a more in-depth review of the new iPad Pro. We're planning on shooting that tomorrow, given that I will have been able to have spent a week with the device. But this is a great time to talk about it because, Rosemary, you do finally have the device in hand. I would love to hear, for folks who don't know, when we first talked, you said that you had in hand an Apple Pencil Pro and a Magic Keyboard. And I misinterpreted that as you also had an iPad Pro, but you didn't. What's that all about? Because we're very U.S. centric on this show, so I just want to have that explained.
Well, as it just so turned out, or happened to turn out, that when I went to order things, I wasn't 100% certain what I wanted from an iPad Pro. I knew I was going to get the new one because thinner and lighter are the two words that will always sell me on a new device, or nearly always, at any rate. I did not do that with the original iPad. I did not get the thinner and lighter iPad 2. That was a mistake, but I wasn't sure what specification I wanted, so I decided to hold off at the time. And as it turned out, the availability for the iPad Pro over here in the UK was very good, so I was able to pop into store and pick this one up. Actually, the day it was released, there was a whole bunch of availability, which I know was not the same everywhere around the world, but the Apple stores near me all seem to have all of the options. And once the release day came around, then you could order them to pick up in store as well, which was very nice and simple for folks. So I was able to get the 1 terabyte version, which is exactly what I wanted once I'd gone back and reviewed my usage, because I think that is something important to consider if you have an iPad already and you are looking at getting the newer, shinier one. do you need a terabyte of storage? Do you need 2 terabytes of storage? Or is 512 okay? And you can, maybe put some of that extra money towards getting the cellular version, for example. You have to actually look at your usage and, not just your usage on average, but your more extreme usages as well. So, for example, when I'm traveling, I download a whole bunch of extra films and TV shows to my iPad to watch while I'm on the road because I won't necessarily have internet. And so I wanted to make sure that I was going to have enough space for, I've got like 16, 17 hours of flights each way coming up in a couple of weeks, Mikah. And needed to make sure I was going to have adequate entertainment with everything that I wanted to download.
That will be the perfect device for it. I love that. I have now I get it. Now I understand. I am a little jealous because at the time that I ordered, I thought, okay, this is somewhat of a redesign, plus the fact that we've got OLED screens. I think that people might jump on these. So I want to make sure I get one as quick as I can. And after I got the 2 thumbs up from our CEO, I went in and placed my order quickly. And so at the time, this was before it was revealed that the different models had different specs. So depending on the size, or I should say the different storage sizes had different specs. If you got the 256 or 512 iPad Pro, then it was kind of a lower set of specs versus getting the 1 terabyte or 2 terabyte. So I ordered the 512 gigabyte model based solely on just my usage of the device. I have not overfilled an iPad, and so 512 was enough for me. And then I came to find out that the storage size made, the storage size made a difference. And so at that point, I thought about canceling, but it was pushing out the date a little bit, and I wanted to make sure to have it on day one so that I could spend a week with it and do a review. There's maybe possibly some chance that I would return it and go up a storage size just so that I have the best specs possible. But at the same time, I don't know that, there's been a lot of conversation around this, and I don't know that a lot of folks are going to run into any issues. I don't regularly edit video on my iPad Pro. Only it's like rarely, occasionally, and regularly, or somewhat regularly and regularly. I'm all the way down, and rarely do I open up Final Cut Pro on the iPad and cut up video. And so I just don't think that it's necessary for me.
No.
But for the folks who are planning on using their iPad as an editing device, even if it's just audio that they're editing, or they're going to be doing a lot of multitasking on the device, then it might be a good idea to get that larger storage size for the sake of having the performance. I'm curious, when you said you looked at your usage, did you mean storage usage or did you mean performance usage?
It was primarily a storage analysis because the key differences between the 512 and the 1 terabyte, aside from the storage space, is it goes from 8 gigabytes of RAM to 16 gigabytes of RAM, and you get an extra core on the performance cores. That's essentially it. As far as the differences go. And a chunk of that RAM and the performance core will actually go towards managing the extra storage that is available to your iPad so that you're not writing to the actual SSD inside. You're storing things in the RAM until you need to put them on the SSD and so on. And if you've got a terabyte of storage space or 2 terabytes of storage space, you're more likely to be messing with some really big files versus the smaller devices. So for me, it was primarily about how much storage space do I need with all of the apps, with all the things downloaded in them, offline, available for use, and all the media and so on, where I wanted to be able to pull it off of my camera and things like that. So I wanted to have a bit of buffer space on that as well. And that looked like it was coming out to 700 or so gigabytes of space with, space for everything that I would want as well. And so I thought, well, I could probably squish into 512, but the 1 terabyte seems like the better option for me. So let's go with that instead. So yeah, for me, it was primarily based on physical storage, though, of course, something worth noting with the iPad Pros is this is a USB-C port, and that means that you can plug in a hard drive that has that is connected via USB-C, and you can pull files on and put files over onto the drive, which means that, for example, if you've got a lot of media, you're a photographer and you just want to be able to pull things off of your camera very quickly, you can pull things off the camera onto the iPad, but then dump them off to a drive while you're busy filling your memory card back up again. So, there's definitely plenty of options out there for folks who are looking at this.
Nice. All right. So there is that. Let us move along to talk about some of the accessories that come along. Actually, no, I think before we move on to talk about the accessories, I do want to take a second to mention that a listener wrote in about something regarding the iPad. And if folks are still trying to decide which iPad they want to purchase and what model exactly, then this plays into it, because this is going to be a question about the Nano-texture glass. And here's the thing. That is one thing that we forgot to mention when it comes to storage size. If you want the Nano-texture glass, that is only available for the 1 terabyte or 2 terabyte model. It is not available for the 256 or 512 models. So this is the question that comes in from Bonnie in Raleigh, North Carolina. Bonnie writes, "Hi, Mikah and Rosemary. I heard on MacBreak Weekly that you, Mikah, talked Leo out of ordering the Nano-texture glass screen, and I was wondering if you could explain in more detail why you suggested that. On Wednesday afternoon, when I was going to order with that, but the delivery date was already out about 4 weeks, so I thought I'd wait until this Wednesday to see what kind of inventory was available at the store, but now I think I should wait and see how it is reviewed. Please elaborate. Love the podcast. Thanks, Bonnie in Raleigh." Okay, so first and foremost, I want to say that the Nano-texture glass is a cool feature that Apple added first and foremost to the Apple XDR display that provides a low to no glare environment. The idea of putting not micro, but nano textures onto the surface of the glass, nano etchings onto the surface of the glass, means that when light hits it, it doesn't reflect off in a way that produces a glare or tries to mitigate it to the best of its ability. But if you have a piece of clear glass or clear to the human eye glass, and you put texture onto the surface of that glass, even if they're at the nano level, there is going to be some reduction in the brightness of the display. And for someone who wants that rich, beautiful, glossy look, that's already kind of a step back. So when I was talking to Leo, there are multiple reasons for Leo specifically. I think that it is, when you look at it, you could see it as a step down because of the difference between the two displays in terms of the brightness that you're seeing. And then also, most people don't actually need to have that Nano-texture glass. On MacBreak Weekly, Jason Snell said something that I thought was interesting. Jason was, by the way, this is as an aside, a lot of folks thought that the press who were invited to kind of get a hands-on time with the iPad were in Cupertino or the surrounding area at the Apple Park Visitor Center and the Steve Jobs Theater. And as Jason Snell said on MacBreak Weekly, no, in fact, this event was held in New York. And that, again, I'm not surprised, because remember that it was at a different time. It was made for East Coast time as opposed to West Coast time as it usually is. So given that, Jason said that while he was there, he got the impression, and in some cases even more than just an impression, that the PR people were suggesting that the Nano-texture glass was a if you know situation, meaning that if you know as a person in the field that you in which you operate are going to need a nano-texture glass display, then you should get the nano-texture glass display. If you don't know if you need one, or if you're pretty sure you don't need one, then there's no reason to get one. It is a very specific thing that is created for the people who know they need it. And given that this is Apple's arguably one of its, not even arguably, it is one of its highest quality displays in an Apple product, then it is no surprise that some pros who are doing color work, who are doing photography work, who are doing graphic design would want to have that nano-texture display, particularly if they are going to use an iPad Pro as kind of an out-in-the-field device. So if you don't see yourself being, like, if Bonnie, you and Raleigh don't regularly go on like safaris and take photographs and want to edit them right there while you're on safari and the sun is beating down on you, I don't know that it's necessary to get the nano-texture display. All that said, and this is the last thing I'll say, and then I'm curious to hear your thoughts, Rosemary. All that said, if you really want it, I'm not stopping you. Like, just get it if you want it. I just think that there is some trade-off that you're going to experience versus the glossy. All right. What were you going to say, Rosemary?
Yeah. Well, I'd say for folks out there who are looking for articles about this, about, whether or not they should get it, just be a little aware of confirmation bias. It is the new shiny, which means that a lot of people want to talk about it and how amazing it is and why you should definitely get it. And I did spot a review earlier today on iPad Pilot News about, somebody who got the new iPad Pro and with the nano-texture and took it up in the cockpit, and they're holding both iPads in their lap, the previous one and the current one, and showing you how much easier it is to see the screen on the new iPad. But both iPads are usable. The nano-texture didn't actually cut the glare. It just made it more readable. And I think that is the thing to be aware of. Now, I have a recommendation for folks who don't necessarily want to splash out the $100, but would like to try a similar effect. Now, this is not exactly the same because this is $11.99. Okay, there's, $90-ish difference between these two. But there is an ESR magnetic drawing screen protector. Now, this is magnetic. So I actually have this on my iPad. And when I was in the studio last year, actually, I had one for the previous iPad. I had to get a new version for this iPad. But this magnetizes, and now I can't get it off, on and off of your device. It's much easier to do when you're just looking at your device, but it does just pop on and off. So if I manage to pick that up and actually take that off, then folks can see. But this is just a nice way to get that sort of that anti-glare finish, which even now I'm looking at it because I think I've got my nails are struggling with performance. There we go. So this is it. It's got these little black bars at the top and the bottom. There's a camera cutout at the top so that you know which way around it goes, and then you can just pop it on your iPad. So if you're looking for something that's going to give you more of a sort of paper-like effect for when you're writing and drawing on your iPad, then I would suggest looking at that ESR option instead, which we can pop a link to in the show notes. It is currently 30% off. I think it's usually $17.99, but ESR tend to have quite a few sales. And that is something that for most folks I'd recommend, because then you still get all of the glossiness, the full blackest black of the display when that is relevant, like when you're watching films and so on. But then you also have that matte effect as you need it. So unless you're going to be outside using your iPad Pro in the sun most of the time, I suspect most folks probably don't want the nano texture. But it does come with a cleaning cloth, which is like $30 separately from Apple. So, it's kind of only $70 for the nano texture display, but I'm not sure it's worth it. Certainly it wouldn't have been for me, and I do use my iPad outside a fair amount. So I know I live in the UK. We usually have clouds, but I promise you, we have plenty of sun as well. Whenever I want to sit outside and I would like to be able to see my screen, that feels like it's when it's at its sunniest.
So this new device obviously features this dual layer OLED display, and it didn't take very long for me to see the difference between the two. I want to share. There's a video, and I will post that into the show notes for you, Kevin, on D19. Oh, maybe not D19. Hold on. It's trying to link to Slack instead of the actual. Okay, now D19. And this is a video showing the previous iPad Pro to the current iPad Pro for its screen. And this is something that you can actually see on a video, because it's showing how on the older iPad Pro on the left in the video, there's kind of a gray-blue cast to the entire thing. And on the right, it is just a deep, deep black with rich colors. And of course, we know that that is because it is an OLED screen where each of the individual pixels has its own lighting. And so that means that pixels that don't need to be lit up can not be lit up, versus the iPad of yesteryear, where they used smaller LEDs as the backlighting for the display. So there is kind of there are a bunch of zones of lighting, and so they can choose to light up parts of it and not parts of it. But that does mean that some of that light is going to bleed into the surrounding area. So on the left, you've got kind of a, in comparison, washed out video, whereas on the right with the new iPad Pro and its beautiful OLED screen, it is not washed out. It is just the parts that need to be lit up are lit up, but the parts that don't are not lit up, and it looks great. So if you, I don't know, if you've used an iPad Pro up to this point as your kind of primary media device, and you have yearned for something that doesn't have as much light bleed, that's another reason that you might want to upgrade to the new OLED iPad Pro. So let's talk about accessories now. Of course, we have the new Magic Keyboard that has been redesigned, and we also have the Apple Pencil Pro. Speaking of the new Magic Keyboard, this is it is going to look similar to the Magic Keyboard of yesteryear in terms of the way that it folds with the, what do they call, like a cantilever design, and it folds up, but a lot has changed. For one, there's this interesting kind of metal bar that runs across the back of it that has the USB-C port on the side of it and a little hinge mechanism right in the middle. Oh, look, I got some gunk on there. And then obviously the camera cutout for the device. But this time, the inside is a metal enclosure with a keyboard that has a function row. We love function rows. So you've got your brightness controls, you've got search, you've got activating Siri, you've got your focus modes, play and pause. All of that stuff is right there in the function mode, plus a nice dedicated lock button. And then below that is the haptic trackpad. And so this actually does have a haptic engine. It has haptics built into it so that when you click, it feels like you're clicking. But right now, because there's nothing connected to this, it doesn't have an iPad attached to it. As I'm pressing on it, nothing is happening. I don't feel anything other than just a slight depressing of it. How are you liking or not liking the new Magic Keyboard? What do you think?
I am loving the new Magic Keyboard. So one of the things that I did on my previous Magic Keyboard is it's all pretty and colorful. I covered this with, I believe this is Dbrand Skins Wraps in their sort of marble paint effect. But I felt like I really had to do it on the inside because just like you noticed on the outside of your Magic Keyboard, Mikah, it got a little grimy. And it was one of those things where I just felt like I was cleaning it a little bit more than I felt like I had to be. Now, obviously, the previous one still had the built-in with the backlights on the keys, which is very important. But it is like this subtle difference here. You've got the metal bar running through the middle, and then the fabric of the Magic Keyboard going around the outside on the old one versus the new one, where the hinge is just built into the metal bar, which has got that USB-C port in the side. So, the fact that there's a USB-C port in the side is honestly something I kind of forgot about until recently, because you can then charge your iPad through this port. This port only provides power to pass through to your iPad versus, the other port built into your iPad, which also does data. But the function row key, oh my gosh, I absolutely love it. Actually, having an escape key, the brightness buttons, the launchpad and spotlight and Siri and so on. This is really great. And more importantly, you've also got your media controls and your volume controls, which I'm pretty good at, just touching the volume controls and getting it right. But if I'm already typing, and I just want to adjust the volume quickly, it's much easier to just reach up with, my third finger, my ring finger on my right hand, and just, tap and adjust very quickly. So I am absolutely loving this. This is also lighter. And I'll note I do have a D-brown skin on here, so that's adding a tiny bit of extra weight. But the new Magic Keyboard is quite a bit lighter, which is a very nice feature, which I greatly appreciate, especially combined with the thinner and lighter iPad Pro, which I'm not sure if folks can actually see that. It's now narrower than the Apple Pencil. Oh yeah, even though I've only got the 11-inch, it's still narrower than that Apple Pencil.
Yes, it is a very, very thin device. And in fact, we were impressed by how it compares in size to almost any Apple product. Apple, of course, said it is the 12.9-inch iPad Pro specifically is the thinnest. I think they said the thinnest product Apple has ever made. I think it's better to say the thinnest device that Apple has ever made. Of course, you had the folks who take things very, 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 very literally, who found a number of other things that Apple sells and said that they were thinner than the iPad Pro. Haha, fun, haha. But anyway, it's very impressive that the iPad Pro is as thin as it is, both, I think, in the 11-inch size and in the 12.9-inch size. Frankly, they are both little feats of engineering. And in the iFixit teardown of both, it is clear that the company still did focus on the resilience of the frame, and that, that was considered in its approach while making the device thinner. Now, we should talk about the new Apple Pencil Pro. This looks a lot like the Apple Pencil that we have had up to this point, and works a lot like the Apple Pencil that we've had up to this point, of the kind of newer version of the Apple Pencil, not the original, in that it has a built-in battery and proper magnets so that you can thwack it to the side of the iPad to charge it, and also to pair it with an iPad. It also has the little screw-off tip so that you can replace it as needed. And outside of that, there are some interesting updates to this device, including now a built-in, as Apple calls it, taptic engine that will provide haptic feedback depending on what you're doing. This pencil also features a few new tricks. One is called barrel roll, which lets you change the way that a brush or other kind of art tool that you're using virtually, change the way that it's shaped based on how you are holding the Apple Pencil, as well as a nice squeeze gesture that joins the double tap gesture of the Apple Pencil, so that you can, it depends on the app. In Apple's built-in apps and its first-party apps, you can use it to kind of summon a little palette that gives you access to your different tools. And even without me kind of being near the iPad, I'm able to squeeze this and I can feel the little taptic vibration that takes place that gives me that sense as if I'm sort of pushing an invisible button for the Apple Pencil. And so it's kind of a fun little fidget to have in your hand. Just however, I don't know how quickly that will drain the battery. So for now, I'll thwack it back to the top of the iPad. There's kind of a bit of a confusing, I would argue, lineup for Apple Pencil because you have, you've got the Apple Pencil first generation, and that is the Apple Pencil where the cap comes off the back and there's a little lightning charger, or rather a lightning plug on the end, so you can plug it into a lightning port and charge it. It used to be that you could just stick it right into the bottom of an iPad and you'd be able to charge it from that. Then there's the Apple Pencil USB-C. This is an Apple Pencil that also has a removable cap on the end of it and charges via USB-C. Then there's the Apple Pencil second generation. That is an Apple Pencil that looks a lot like the one that we were talking about, but doesn't have the other gestures and things or the barrel roll functionality. It simply has the double tap gesture, and now the new Apple Pencil Pro. So when you scroll down the list, you start to see where things change. So for example, this is kind of wild. The USB-C Apple Pencil does not have pressure sensitivity, but the Apple Pencil first generation does have pressure sensitivity. All three of the newer devices can attach magnetically. The Apple Pencil Pro and the Apple Pencil second generation can, of course, charge whenever they are attached to the side, but the Apple Pencil USB-C cannot, nor can the original Apple Pencil, as we've talked about. All three of the new ones support Apple Pencil Hover, and then it kind of goes down from there. So the USB-C version of the Apple Pencil also doesn't have a little sensor inside to detect that double tap feature or double tap gesture. So when it comes to the Apple Pencil, different Apple Pencils are able to be used on different iPads, and some Apple Pencils don't support some of the newer models of iPad. And so it's very confusing which ones you could use. So I just recommend that before you buy an Apple Pencil, you go look at the Apple Pencil that you're thinking about purchasing, and you look in the compatibility section for that Apple Pencil and make sure that it will work with the iPad that you have or the iPad that you're planning to buy. But strictly speaking, of the new iPad or the new Apple Pencil Pro, what are your thoughts, Rosemary?
Well, I am pretty excited by this, to be honest. So I have been playing with the Apple Pencil a lot. So I am here in Freeform, which is an app that you can get for free from Apple on my new iPad Pro. And I'm just, going along, doodling, doing whatever it is I feel like doing. And I can squeeze the barrel of the Apple Pencil to, pop it open, select a different tool, pop it open, and select the color picker, etc. Now, if I pop into the settings, I can actually play with this a little bit. So I can change what some of the actions do. So there is the squeeze action, which is currently set to show the tool palette. But you can actually swap this. So you can have it switch between the current tool and the eraser, the current tool and the last used tool, just show the color palette, show the ink attributes, or one of my favorite little things, you can run a shortcut. Yeah, you can run a shortcut. So this could be really useful for saying I would like to be able to squeeze and pop open a quick note, for example. And you can also adjust your sensitivity here. There's also some other things as well where you can try Scribble. So I can try writing. So I'll try writing Mikah, which I'm writing really badly because I am using my iPad and it's basically vertical because it's on the Magic Keyboard, and it still figured out that I wrote Mikah. So I'm pretty happy about that. And then I can just, scratch out a word to delete it, draw a line over a word to select it, or draw a circle around it to select it. I can, just type insert something somewhere, and there's also joining things together as well, which is quite nice. It's worth playing in the settings for that. But I have been having a little bit of fun, Mikah, because I'm not sure how well this is going to show up, but GoodNotes It's one of the apps that updated recently with support for the Apple Pencil. Procreate, in their most recent update, said support for the new Apple Pencil is coming soon. So I'm just going to adjust the width of this a little bit. I'm using the fountain pen tool here. But as I, adjust the angle that I'm holding the pencil at, you can see it's changing the width of the line. Now I'm having to do doodles because it wasn't showing up in my handwriting because obviously I'm at a very vertical angle here. But I love this.
Yeah.
It's really nice. It just feels a little bit more, intuitive and like it's real writing. Now I do have the ESR screen protector on here, that definitely contributes. And I know apps have been doing things like this style of writing before, but it was kind of a guesstimate based on like the speed that you were doing things at and the shape that you just drawn and so on. And sometimes if you were quick, you could spot what they just changed. So yeah, for me, this is a really nice improvement. And I would definitely, recommend that people who are interested have a play with one of these, at least in the App Store and in the Apple Store. Yeah, it's worth going into an Apple Store or somewhere that sells these, that has them out for demo, and actually giving it a try. Just because you may find that while it's really cool that you can squeeze it, you trigger it accidentally all the time, and that's not worth having. If you're going to trigger it accidentally all the time, so you're going to have to turn that feature off basically, then you could probably get away with a cheaper Apple Pencil or, something else that's got good hand rejection.
Absolutely. The Apple Pencil Pro retails at $129. The Magic Keyboard is going to depend on the size of your iPad, but retails for between $299 and $399. $349. And of course, the iPad Pro starts at $999. I am not sure what let's see what the current ship date would be for like a base model. Just go 11-inch. Let's see, silver, and then just do, 256, standard, of course, glass, Wi-Fi alone, and no engraving, none of the extra stuff, no Apple Pencil or keyboard, and no trade-in, and buy straight out for $999, no Apple Care Plus, although I do recommend that in most cases. It looks like it is available to pick up in store today, and it also would deliver as early as May 23rd. So there are some models that are just fine, doing just fine on stock. So that's good to know. If you are, hankering for an iPad Pro, your model might be in stock at a local Apple store. And if not, you might be able to get it delivered to you pretty quickly. All right. I think it is time, unless, Rosemary, do you have anything else you want to say before we move on?
I'm going to say, folks, don't necessarily run to immediately buy the new iPad Pro. If you're excited by it, give folks a couple of weeks to do returns and Apple a couple of weeks to process those, because at some point they'll start appearing on the Apple Refurb store where you can get some good deals. And there's some other sales on out there as well. Plus, it gives folks time to buy that nanotechnology glass with the nano etching on it and then discover that maybe it's not for them. So maybe there'll be a whole influx of those available in the Refurb store for you to pick up if you really want one. So you don't have to run to get it. You will still be able to enjoy it in a couple of weeks or a month or so when they become available at slightly lower prices.
That is a great pro tip. All right, let us head into feedback. We've got one feedback question which comes from James. James writes, Rosemary and Mikah, I had a niche, as some people say, question regarding CarPlay and standby mode that I was wondering if you or Mikah had an answer to. I recently got a MagSafe charging mount for my car that at the time did not have CarPlay. In the horizontal orientation, it was able to show the large button format for a clock, weather, etc. It was great. Of course, this is the standby mode. But when I subsequently added CarPlay functionality, the standby mode will not display. Is there any possible workaround that you can think of? Thanks in advance, James Gray. James. So James basically is saying, hey, before I had CarPlay in my car, I was just using standby mode with my phone, and I liked that. Now that I have CarPlay that I've added to my vehicle, I connect to my car and my phone together, And when that happens, it switches to CarPlay mode, and now I don't see standby on my phone. Can I keep standby on my phone? The quick right. So as far as go ahead. Actually, Rosemary, you go first, and then we'll see what you have to say.
Well, I mean, I went a little extra for this episode, Mikah, and I got a CarPlay display to bring into my house because, the folks who are watching iOS today deserve the best. I'm aware it's not fully in focus, but the point is more that CarPlay is connected. My phone is plugged in. It's plugged in via a cable, but that's fine. But just like James, I don't have standby mode showing up. But that is because I'm in driving focus. This is something that I found out a little while ago. So once your phone is in driving focus, then it won't show up. So at the moment, apparently it's playing some music as well from something else I was experimenting with. But it should, once you turn off your driving focus, then actually pop up with the standby stuff. Now, in my case, it's struggling a little bit because it's plugged in physically and screen sharing. Mm-hmm. But when I played with this earlier, it did actually come up for me. So it may be that so the driving focus mode specifically and sleep focus, they are not normal focus modes. They are standard as in Apple ships them with your device, but they are limited. They're locked down. So if you go into the settings and you have a look at those, which I'm going to do right now, I'm just going to pop open settings and then I can show folks. So under settings, if you go to focus, if I open, for example, holiday, this is one that I've created, okay, then I can see that I've got things like focus filters and a schedule and so on at the bottom. But if I go into driving, I don't have apps. Apps doesn't show up here at the top in my allow notifications from, and I don't have a schedule. That's not an option. The only thing I can say is turn on automatically, turn on when connected to card Bluetooth, or active manually, and yes or no to activating this with CarPlay. And that is something that makes a difference when it comes to these things, because your phone in other focus modes, for example, you can turn on and off your always on display. And if your always on display gets turned off, then obviously your standby mode won't work. But I believe CarPlay, and specifically the driving focus mode, is turning that off automatically, meaning that you're not going to be able to turn it on and work around it, which is part of the problem. So I'm just going to disconnect my phone from the cable for a moment, which may be very dangerous for the next episode of iOS Today, because once that happens, and I'll just report back in a moment if it does indeed show the standby mode again. But it may be that it's because it updated the other day. It may be that this was a bug that they fixed, because you're not supposed to be able to do that. Yeah,
I'm curious because I understand that if CarPlay is going, then why would you also have that turned on as well? So it would be cool if, as long as you're not in driving mode, you were able to access standby as you'd like. And again, as Rosemary showed on that screen where she went into the focus mode for driving specifically, there were two options. You would change that, James, to, instead of automatically when connected to car Bluetooth, you'd choose manually. And then you could keep that, but then down below where it says, I think it says something like automatically when connected to CarPlay, you would turn that off so that driving mode doesn't turn on, so that then you are able to have standby mode come on as long as you're MagSafe charging to the back and are in, horizontal mode. Okay. With that, I think I can hear the music. It's time for Shortcuts Corner. It's time for Shortcuts Corner, the part of the show where you write in with your shortcuts requests, and Rosemary Orchard, our shortcuts expert, provides a response. Before we get to today's Shortcuts Corner request, now is the time where we tell you that if you have been experimenting with shortcuts and you've run into an issue and you're trying to figure it out and you haven't figured it out and you want to know how to do the thing with shortcuts, you can get help with that. you send us an email, iostoday@twit.tv. When you email us there, then Rosemary will see that you have a Shortcuts Corner request and you need help, and will do her best to provide it. So all that's to say, we are running out of Shortcuts Corner requests. We could use some new ones. And if you've sent in one before that we have yet to answer on the show, feel free to resubmit. I know some of you are very, very kind about making sure that you're not loading down our email inbox. But if you haven't seen your question answered before on the show, go ahead and you have our permission to send it in again and have your Shortcuts Corner request considered and hopefully answered. With that out of the way, Sir Duck of PNW has written in and says, "Hi, folks. We try to limit the kids' screen time after school, so we automate the bedtime routine. Unfortunately, the clever little buggers started getting up really early for their breakfast. They both do virtual school, so I set the downtime, which is a feature of screen time, to end at 10 a.m. to ensure they aren't on devices before school starts. Otherwise, getting them moving in the morning is difficult. This started being an issue when we transitioned everyone to Mac Minis for their school computers. We have to manually disable downtime every day that we start before 10. It's not hard, but it is several clicks and a pin, typing in a pin, to get there. I don't mind typing in the pin, but is there a way to make a shortcut to toggle downtime, even if it means I still need to enter the pin?" And again, that is from Sir Duck of PNW.
Yeah, so this is an interesting challenge because the problem is specifically coming from the fact that sometimes they start school earlier than 10, which also absolutely amazing. It's been shown that in various studies that kids' brains do not work super well in the morning, and the whole like teenagers having to go to school at like 8 a.m. or even earlier is really terrible for their brains. So I'm glad that you let your kids start school at like 10. That's really lovely. But having to go in and manually turn this off is a little tricky. Now, downtime can sync across devices, which means that you could theoretically disable it using your parental controls from your device to sync over to the others, but you're still going to have to like go in and do that, somewhere. And so I did a little experimenting, and I'm very pleased to report that I have a shortcut. Now, I will show this shortcut on my phone, but I will not be able to run it on my phone for one very good reason, because I've specified this is for Mac OS downtime. Now, I can create a shortcut that will open the settings area on your iPhone to downtime, or the Mac OS settings system preferences for screen time settings, and then go to the downtime section, depending on which device. But you're specifically asking about the Mac, so I thought I would show folks. So Mac OS system preferences has it's sort of a URL scheme. Okay, so a URL scheme is where you can open a URL and say it starts with HTTP or HTTPS. Then that'll go through Safari or Firefox or whatever your browser is. And you folks may have seen TEL numbers where it's TEL:/ and then a number. And when you tap on that, it'll call a number. And mail to links. So mail to : and then, it might have iOS today @twit.tv to send in your request for this sort of thing. And that will open your mail app of choice. So system preferences on macOS has a similar sort of thing where it's x-apple.systempreferences.com. : and then you've got the name of the pane. So this, in this case, happens to be screen time settings extension. And then you want specifically to go to the downtime area. So if you run this on a Mac, it will just go straight into the downtime settings, which is a lot faster than having to open, click Apple, open system preferences, wait for it to load, click on screen time, wait for that to load, click on downtime, wait for that to load, and then disable it and, type in the pin. Unfortunately, there is no way to control downtime directly with shortcuts, because Apple have figured out that kids are really great at following YouTube tutorials. And it turns out that if you give kids access to like the ability to create a shortcut that can do something like that, they will find a way to get their parents and guardians and those people who have those pins to just run the shortcut. And the person won't realize that they're disabling downtime. So yeah, I did have a look to see if you could disable downtime automatically with focus mode. So if you could enable a focus mode and have that turn downtime off. But I realized as I was doing that that's not possible, because then your kids could just enable school focus at like 9 a.m. or 7 a.m., whenever it is they get up, and then they'd be able to just do whatever they wanted on the internet. So unfortunately, I think this is the best we are going to be able to do. But there's a whole host of these URLs available, and we can pop a link in the show notes to where you can find this for macOS, so that you can figure out how to find this sort of information to open a particular system preferences pane, because it is quite useful to be able to just jump to a certain section of them. So what I would do with this is, on the Mac, I would actually have it show up in the menu bar, because that's a toggle that you can enable on a Mac in Shortcuts. You can, so in the settings, you can turn on pin in menu bar, and then it will just be in Shortcuts in the menu bar up by the clock, so that you can actually go ahead and see that. And then you just click, and you're done at any point to get to those system preferences and turn off downtime to get started with school.
Very clever. I love the idea of just having it right there in the menu bar. So see, that is what you get when you send in your questions to iOS Today at twit.tv. A thorough response. That is going to bring us to the end of this episode of iOS Today. We thank you so much for tuning in. If you have regular questions, even outside of Shortcuts, you can send those to us, iOS Today at twit.tv. Rosemary Orchard, if folks want to follow you online and check out all the great work you're doing, where should they go to do so?
Well, the best place is over at rosemaryorchard.com, which has got links to podcasts, books, apps, and all of those other things that I am involved in. And of course, for our fabulous Club TWiT members, I'm also always keeping an eye on the live chat during the recordings and the iOS Today channel inside the Club TWiT Discord after the show. Where can folks find you, Mikah?
You can find me at Mikah Sargent on many a social media network, or you can head to chihuahua.coffee. That's CHIHUA.coffee, where I've got links to the places I'm most active online. If you are listening to this and wish you could be watching it, well, consider joining Club TWiT, twit.tv/Club TWiT. When you join the club for $7 a month, you will have the opportunity to actually watch our show, because that is one of several benefits you will get as a member of Club TWiT. You also get every single TWiT show with no ads, just the content. You can access our members-only feed, like TWiT, the TWiT Plus bonus feed that has extra content you won't find anywhere else, behind the scenes, before the show, after the show. Special Club TWiT events get published there. Access to hands-on Mac, hands-on tech, hands-on Windows, Home Theater Geeks, iOS Today, the Untitled Linux Show in video forms, and our members-only Discord server, a fun place to go to chat with your fellow Club TWiT members and also those of us here at TWiT. All of that is only available to our club members, and we appreciate those of you who are members who will not be hearing this, because this doesn't go into the version that goes out to our members. But those of you who are listening and wish you could be watching, again, twit.tv/Club TWiT. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you again for another episode of iOS Today. Bye-bye.